Hey everyone, in today's video we're going to look at how we secure property development deals. Now before we can secure a deal, we need to understand what sort of deal it is we're after. And in order to do that, we need to look at what our goals are. What are we trying to achieve with the deal in question? So to do this, you need to reverse engineer from your goals. So for example, if you were starting out and your goal was to have enough project management fees in order to quit your job, then the first step is figuring out what sort of site is going to deliver project management fees that equate to your current wage or the wage you require. So let's say, for example, your desired income was £50,000 a year, or you were currently earning £50,000 a year, so you wanted to replace your income. Well, then you would need a project with a construction value of around 1.7 million to give you project management fees of £50,000 over the project lifespan. So then we know that we have a build budget, so to speak, of around 1.7. And let's say in the area that you live, the build costs were around £180 per square foot. That means you would need to be building around 9,500 square feet of property in order to deliver you your £50,000 a year project management fee. So then from that, we can start looking at what sort of site it is you need to be identifying in terms of size, number of units, in order to meet that goal. So we know we need to be delivering around 9,500 square feet, but depending on the area, that could be 10 houses or it could be 5 houses. So, it could be, for example, 6 or 7 houses around 1,500 square foot, very much middle of the market. So that then gives you, based on your goals and your requirements, the type of site or the amount of site you need to be approaching in order to meet those goals. So that's step one in securing our deals, is knowing what we're looking for. So now we know what we're looking for, we need to know how do we want to approach that and where do we want to find those leads. And one of the first steps in that process is deciding, do you want to take a site through planning yourself and potentially add more margin into that deal and more profit into that deal? Or do you want to buy something that has planning already and get started in the construction a lot sooner, but with a smaller margin? Now, the decision around whether or not you're going to do that is going to depend on several things. One, the pressing need to get the profit out of the deal, even if it's a smaller amount. If you desperately want to quit your job and you desperately need those project management fees, then potentially buying something with planning is going to be better for you because you can get moving on it quicker and therefore reach your goal sooner. Or let's say you had great planning knowledge, but not as much construction knowledge, then you may want to add value into the deal where you can, and that is in the planning stage. Therefore, for you, taking a site through planning is going to be best use of your time. So you need to look at your goals, your objectives, and yours and your team's experience and skill sets in order to decide which of those two routes is best for you. So then once you know if you want it with or without planning, you need to look at where you're going to find these leads. So if it's a site with planning, you can look both on and off market for these opportunities. If you're looking on market, then that one's one of the easier routes in the sense that the leads are there. So you find them on places like Rightmove, you approach them, you make offers, you start building relationships with agents. You also call round as many agents in your local area as possible and express to them what you're after. Some recommendations I have when working with agents is just everything they send you, you make sure you reply to it. Even if it's, no, this deal isn't for me, it doesn't meet my criteria, just to remind you what I'm looking for is XYZ. And remember, you'll know what that XYZ is because you've gone through that exercise at the start of establishing what site you need to be delivering to meet your goals. So that's how you're going to find your on-market sites. And then for off-market, I would recommend looking through planning leads in order to find any opportunities that have planning where the landowner might want to sell, but they aren't on market yet. Now, if you go down the route of a site without planning, then first of all, obviously you need to understand planning principles and what makes a piece of land viable for taking it through planning. Once you know that, you then know what sites to approach, and I'd recommend using a mapping software like Searchland in order to find those opportunities. So now that you've got several sites that you would want to make an offer on, you need to go through the steps of appraising a site in order to come up with an offer. Now, if the site in question is a site that has no planning on it, then we need to understand what can fit on that parcel of land. This is where understanding different design principles and planning principles are going to come in, so that we understand the basic parameters around site layouts, road layouts, gardens, house design, things like that. So that would be stage one on sites that don't have planning. If, of course, you've got a great relationship with an architect or you're happy to pay an architect to do all of your initial viability assessments, then that's another way of establishing how many units can be fit on a site as well. Once we know how many units can go on a site, and obviously if the site has planning, then we know we're just appraising the planning that's in place, we then put all of these numbers into an appraisal. So the first step is establishing our gross development value, and I've done a whole video on appraisals, but just to recap, first step is establishing gross development value, so the total that all of those units would sell for. That's our GDV. From that, we start adding in our costs, so these can be costs for things like obtaining planning if the site doesn't have planning, or perhaps even just things like our discharge conditions. So all of our planning costs go into one section. Any planning contributions need to be allowed for, so these are things like Section 106 and Community Infrastructure Levy. We also need to allow for any unusual abnormals on that site, so these could be things like unusual services required, contamination on the land or demolition of buildings. It could be remediation of invasive plants like Japanese knotweed. So they're all of our abnormals. We then have our build costs. So this is the raw price per square foot or price per metre square to build that site. Plus we would have a build contingency. Beyond that, we would also have our professional fees. And it's in this professional fees section that we would allow our own project management fee. So again, if the desire for yourself is to replace your own income, going back to goal setting at the start, then this is where obviously we need to make sure that that number that's produced by the appraisal mirrors your objectives. And then beyond that, we also have our exit fees, so the cost of exiting that transaction. Now that could be show home fees or estate agent fees, or it could just be the cost of refinance, new valuations and legal fees if you're looking to retain those units. Now, once you've got your GDV and all your costs allowed for, you can then look at a residual land value. And the residual land value is the number that is in your appraisal when the profit margin sits at, personally, I like 23%, but you'll hear anywhere from 20 to 23%. So let's say you put all your numbers in, your GDV, all of your costs, and a land value of £500,000, which then kicks out a margin of 23%. The argument is, therefore, that the land value sits at around £500,000 for that parcel of land. Now, just because that's the residual land value, that doesn't mean that's what you have to pay. So, for example, if you've invested money at planning's quite risky. There's no guarantee on planning. So have you got a return on investment that's satisfactory to you for the risk of that capital and time? Personally, if I've put in £50,000 at planning, I want at least £50,000 back on top of my investment to warrant that risk. So straight away, I'd be taking off that cost from the land value, plus any margin that you feel works for you, also given the situation with the landowner and also what the land's core value is as it stands. This will then give you a number which you want to offer. Let's say it's £600,000. That's the number you come up with as your offer. The next stage of securing a deal is, what does that offer look like? Is that a straight subject to planning? Is there some sort of staged payments? Will they get £300,000 of the £600,000 on the day of completion and then £300,000 at the back end of the deal? Would you offer maybe a joint venture? That's the next stage, is understanding exactly what deal structure you want to present to the landowner. But that is the next stage, to clearly articulate to the landowner what it is you're offering to them. My personal preference is to do this in person or over the phone initially, just because you can gauge that initial emotional reaction from someone in a way that you can't if they just receive it on an email. So I would put forward my offer, clearly articulate the terms associated with that, and then I would follow it up formally in writing. Once you have an offer agreed, and this may take a little bit of back and forth negotiation, but once you have that offer agreed, the next stage in securing your deal is getting it under contract. Personally, I like to do a lot of the initial running for the solicitor, so I want to put forward the deal to them with the terms agreed in as much detail as possible. Otherwise, this can slow the deal whilst the solicitors go back and forth agreeing the terms between themselves. Ideally, you want to put forward something like a deal pack, in essence, to your solicitor with the title information and a heads of terms or a memorandum of sale, something like that, which articulates exactly what you're offering, under what terms, what is the proposed contract type, who is the purchaser, who is the seller, and who are the respective solicitors for each party. That way there's no confusion, and hopefully everyone is aligned going into that contract administration. Once it's then with solicitors, they're going to move forward, hopefully as quickly as possible, to get the purchase contract signed and only at the point of the purchase contract being signed would I class that deal as being secured. So there are several stages to go through before a deal can be secured. And just to recap those, that is first of all, setting your goals and understanding what it is you want the deal to do. Reverse engineering from your goals to establish the type of site you're looking for. Look at your own experience, your team's experience, and your timelines to establish whether or not you want to look at something with or without planning permission already in place. Establish your route to approach. Is that going to be on or off market? Make your approaches. Once you've had offers received, understanding what can fit on the site or looking into the planning in more detail. Putting all the numbers together in an appraisal and checking it once, twice, 3 times over. Understanding the residual land value, and from the residual land value, understanding what offer you want to make, allowing for any margins that you want in the land. Clearly articulating that offer to the landowner, as well as the structure of the offer or the nuances of that deal. Once you have the offer number agreed and the deal structure agreed, presenting that very clearly to the solicitors of both parties to get the legal process moving and hopefully get your purchase contract signed as quickly as possible. So that, in short, is how we secure property development deals. Hopefully that made sense and was helpful for everybody. If there are any other videos you want me to do, drop a comment in the comment box below. If not, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.